In 1937, an isolated facility in Manchuria was founded. Over the course of the next 8 years, it would see the worst in humanity. Thousands of men, women and children being subjected to horrific experimentation. From large-scale biological weapons testing, vivisections performed with no anesthesia, rape and forced pregnancy, this facility would see the worst experiments in recorded history. All being spearheaded by lead medical officer Shiro Ishii, the director of the now infamous Unit 731.
Police have captured a man whom they believe to be the son of Sam.
This is regarding a mass suicide, and I can give you the address.
They called themselves the Family. They came and went, and the number varied from 20 to 30.
Eight years before the start of World War II, Japan had begun its own campaign with the invasion of Manchuria in 1931. This was done after an orchestrated false flag operation in which Japanese officers blew up a section of the South Manchurian Railway. China would state that this was the start of the Second Sino-Japanese War. For the next 14 years, the Imperial Army under the guise of Emperor Hirohito would commit countless horrific war crimes, including one of the most infamous atrocities to ever scar the country, the rape of Nanking. Studying at Kyoto Imperial University, Shiro Ishii started as a microbiologist. Focusing his research on World War I, he studied the effects of biological and chemical warfare that took place. Becoming a promising surgeon in 1921, Shiro was already showing signs of his obsession with death. Throughout his early years, he wanted to expand his knowledge into the macabre. So sometime in the 1930s, the Imperial Army obliged. He was tasked to conduct covert experiments on human guinea pigs at a secret prison camp in China. However, in 1936, some prisoners of war managed to escape the camp and spread word of Dr. Ishii's crimes across the country. This forced the Imperial Army to destroy the site and move operations to Pingfang, an area located outside the city of Harbin. But this was only a small hurdle in Ishii's plan. Funded by the Japanese government and under the official name of the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwangtung Army, a huge compound was constructed with over 150 buildings to house up to 400 prisoners. This was stretched across 2 square miles. This was the birth of Unit 731. The examination and testing of frostbite was one of the most documented cases in Unit 731. Many prisoners were chained outside in the bitter snow completely naked and would be studied to see the effects of frostbite on bare skin. However, there was a much more insidious way they were tested. A specialized freezer had been built for the unit, and once a prisoner was locked inside, the temperature was dropped to extreme levels. Once the arms and legs were completely frozen, they were dragged out and their limbs were thawed to study the rotting human flesh. Many other prisoners were forced to experience some form of water torture. A common event was a subject having restricted access to liquids, being thrown in a cramped dark room with many other prisoners as the heat rose from their body temperatures. They were dehydrated to the point of collapse or death. Prisoners were also forcibly restrained to a gurney and injected with copious amounts of seawater to see if it was a good substitute for saline solution. Needless to say, these tests were a failure. The surgeries are some of the most grim experiments to ever take place at Unit 731. Prisoners were shot in the stomach so the Japanese surgeons could practice removing bullets, Legs and arms were amputated without administering anesthesia to study blood loss. Men, women and children were tied to poles and bayoneted. A Russian mother was forced into a chamber with her child and they were both gassed. Sometimes researchers would even reattach body parts. One case, a prisoner had their stomach removed and the esophagus attached directly to the intestines. Many subjects were also infected with venereal diseases, and the researchers would perform a vivisection to see the effects it had on the human body. These doctors, they operated with impunity. In the surrounding villages, Dr. Ishii would send out one of the most feared units in the military police, the Kempei Tai. They were commonly referred to as the Japanese Gestapo. Whether you're a man, woman or child, Chinese, Korean, Russian, political prisoner to a child deemed committing suspicious activity, it simply did not matter. Ishii did not discriminate. He wanted a wide range of subjects for his diabolical acts. Once you were past the gates of Unit 731, you were no longer a human being. A common phrase uttered around the camp was, "How many logs have fallen today?" These people were being referred to as a simple piece of wood. To this day, China is still feeling the effects of Unit 731, all due to Ishii dropping specialized bombs across the country containing fleas infected with the plague. With all these atrocities committed and the act of burning these people to ash, he gained high prestige from the Japanese government. He was even awarded the Order of the Golden Kite for his bravery. And sadly for many families of the prisoners, there was never any justice. On August 15th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito surrendered unconditionally to the Allied powers after the successful detonation of 2 atomic bombs. The destruction destroyed the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and it also took the lives of an estimated 210,000 people. Immediately after the surrender, the Japanese demolished Unit 731 in order to erase all evidence of the atrocities committed at the death camp. Ishii ordered the remaining 150 subjects to be executed and released thousands of plague-infested rats into the surrounding areas. Knowing he would be punished for his war crimes, Dr. Ishii faked his own death and went into hiding to evade prosecution. He was later found in 1946 and turned over to the American occupational forces for interrogation. With the start of the Cold War, the United States was desperate not to have Ishii's research fall into the hands of Russia. After his capture, Dr. Ishii offered to reveal details of the experiments conducted at Unit 731 in exchange for immunity for himself and the top-level members of his research team. The United States agreed to the plea bargain. Dr. Ishii and his staff, who had been dubbed the Devil's Doctors, went on to obtain high-profile and influential careers in politics, medicine and business. They would go on to take leadership roles in many institutes across Japan, including its Medical Association, the National Institute for Health and the National Cancer Center, all while the victims of Unit 731 and its families were left in the dirt. The immunity deals granted to Dr. Ishii were kept secret from the public for years, with the help from the British government. Details of the atrocity would not arise until sometime in the 1980s, at which point it was far too late. Dr. Shiro Ishii had already succumbed to throat cancer in 1960 and died at the age of 67. To this day, Japan denies what happened at Unit 731, explaining that many of the accounts are either exaggerated or simply did not take place at all. And to this day, many families of the victims still demand justice. So that was the case of Unit 731. Please keep in mind this was somewhat of a summary of the events that took place. If I were to delve deep into this atrocity, it would have taken much longer than a month to get this video out. So I've done my best to condense the events to its most prominent points. Of course, Shiro Ishii was not the only doctor to commit horrific acts. However, he was the staging ground for me to tell the story. Now, I would like to reinforce I'm not a native Japanese speaker, nor Mandarin or Cantonese, so please forgive any mispronunciations. But I do hope you enjoyed the episode. Feel free to leave more suggestions and subscribe to keep up to date with the episodes. I've been Mr. Blank, and you've been watching Beyond the Dark.